Well, then let me ask you about, there's some of the efforts that are out there now to change the program and to develop the program. Now, there's charter schools, and I mean, in some ways that's a misnomer because it suggests a certain kind of a school when we know that it's a whole lot of different kinds of schools. But there are different kinds of charter schools. There's the KIPP schools and the uncommon schools and others that are out there. What's your assessment of some of the programs, some of the efforts that are out there to do just what you're suggesting,
Look,
improve the program?
Right. Look, we need models that work, and we need to be able to replicate them. Part of what we suggested last week in the speech I delivered was we have to totally overhaul the teacher development and evaluation system. But most importantly, we have to understand that it's a systems problem. Because if we help one teacher become a great teacher, that's fantastic for those kids that teacher has. But the real key is, how do we replicate that success so that we know what works and replicate that, and we abandon what doesn't? So what's happened is that there's a lot of one-offs. So there may be a great charter school in one place, there may be a great public school in another place, but 90% of our kids go to public schools. We need to make sure we help all those kids. How do we lift all boats? So what we've said about charter schools, including the fact that the union I used to lead started 2 charter schools while I was its president.
Right.
So what we say about charter schools is they can be great incubators for instructional practice. They can be great incubators for labor relations practice. Let's learn from them, and let's do what works and see if we can import that into other public schools. But what we shouldn't do is have them compete with each other. And what we shouldn't do is let charter schools, which happens sometimes, have some advantages that other public schools do not.
Well, are there any programs, either in the charter schools or in this, there's a lot of experimentation going on in the broader school systems as well. Is there anything that stands out in particular that you would commend our attention to?
Well, look, there's lots. I am blessed because I was the head of the New York City local teachers union for almost 12 years. And I've been the head of the American Federation of Teachers the last 1.5 years, and I've been in 50 different places around the country. So I get to see a lot of schools. So number one, the amount of hard work is incredible. The dedication of teachers is extraordinary. So what we need to do is look at the kinds of things that work. What I've seen in schools that work are tremendous connection between the adults. It's not a kumbaya moment, but it is working together to make sure that kids get a decent education. Teachers in some ways are physicians of the mind. They are making they're making hundreds of different decisions every single hour, every single minute. So ultimately, the adults have to work together. That's why labor management relations have to be good. The second thing that we see is that in places like charter schools that work or public schools that work, we reduce the anonymity of kids. So whether you call it small class sizes or whether you reduce the student-teacher ratio, those things are important to really make sure that there's a real connection between teacher and child. The third thing in schools that work are that if kids are falling behind, we see that, we differentiate instruction, we help. If kids need to be strivers and need more, we see that, we differentiate instruction, we help, which means that teachers get the tools and the time they need to do that job. Now, I can go on and on. Great schools sometimes have great parental engagement. Great schools sometimes have a real sense of environment that works, and a sense of and a code of conduct that works. But the things that are really constant between great schools that work are great relationships between the adults in the building, all focus on helping kids achieve, but great relationships, not adversarial relationships, and ensuring that there's less anonymity with kids.
I want to go back to something you said earlier as one of the elements of some of the agreements that have been reached, and that's a process for evaluating and assessing teachers and having a system in place that can effectively weed out underperforming teachers. Could you talk a little bit more about what you see as some of the key elements of a fair process, and maybe some examples of where it's been implemented?
So look, you know, there's a lot of confusion between the issue of whether somebody is effective and other kinds of discipline issues or dismissal kinds of issues. So let me talk about both for a second. No one wants teachers that are not effective. The issue becomes, how do we help teachers learn to be effective? Often teaching, like when I taught, you know, we used to tease about somebody just threw us the keys, we walked into our classroom, we closed the door, and it was pretty isolating. And maybe every now and then somebody would come in to say, oh, you're doing this right, you're doing this wrong, or would watch your practice. But that's not the way we create, grow, and nurture a great teaching corps. So what we've proposed is to say, let's create a development and evaluation system that's based upon helping all teachers become great teachers. And if they can't, then we help them, and if we can't help them, then we have a process that removes them from the profession. Not a glacial process, but we do this in a very expedient and timely but fair manner. So our evaluation system has several components. 1, teacher standards. 2, assessing teacher practice. 3, making sure that teachers have the tools and time they need to do a great job, including the mentoring and induction that they need. And when we talk about assessment of teacher practice, we're talking about including student learning in there, because obviously a lot of what we need to do is not just what we've taught, but what have kids learned. But where we differ from some of the folks that you know, just think that there's a silver bullet for education, one panacea, is that when you talk about things like test scores or any other indicator of student learning, we have to have multiple measures, not just one snapshot of test scores, just like you can't have one snapshot of a principal walking in for 2 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes once a year. So, and even when we talk about test scores, we're thinking about how you look at an individual's child progressing, not comparing one set of test scores one year to another set of test scores another year.
We have a little bit of time left. What are some of your ideas and some of the approaches that you have to building the membership of the American Federation of Teachers and appealing to some of the new and very idealistic young teachers that are coming into the profession through Teach for America and some of the other programs? What's the plan of the AFT to be relevant and something that these new teachers will embrace?
Well, look, our movement has the same values it always had, which is, how do we help all kids succeed so that they can not simply dream their dreams but achieve them? And how do we help workers, whether they're teachers or other workers, have an ability to dream their dreams, to not simply live paycheck by paycheck, but to make sure that they have that vision both in school and outside, professional respect, economic respect, and dignity. And when you actually really act in the way you believe, a lot of your members want to be activists in the union. And so we welcome new teachers. We welcome them from any walk, you know, any place they start, whether it be Teach for America or the old-fashioned way. But at the end of the day, our union is about making a difference in the lives of kids and the others we serve, and we know the only way that that works is for our members to thrive.
Well, thank you, Randi Weingarten, for helping us understand where the AFT stands on the critical question of educational reform. Whether or not we are truly able to turn a corner on making schools work for all students, it does seem clear that teachers and their unions are going to play an important part. I'm Fred Feinstein, and this has been Work Life.